Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9PBS.
Thanks for joining us for another edition, and happy St. Patrick's Day, everybody. We've got a special show coming your way, including on Next Up, the second half, Dr. Peter Wise Jackson, the president of the Missouri Botanical Garden. He'll be grilled on Next Up by Alvin Reid and Wendy Wiese. Let's meet our panelists, starting with Wendy Wiese from KTRS, Mr. Bill McClellan from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, Ray Hartmann from KTRS, rawstory.com, and the Riverfront Times, Mr. Alvin Reid from the St. Louis American. And I want to tell everybody that if we follow Donnybrook STL on Twitter today, 9PBS just tweeted video from 1989 of Bill McClellan carrying his son Jack in a St. Patrick's Day parade.
Very cool.
That is cute.
Very cool.
Well, I used to carry my daughter too. That was we were in a contingent that dressed like potatoes.
Oh, nice. Oh, yes, that's exactly right. So you can see that on Twitter, and maybe we'll do that before the hour is over. Alvin Reid, I want to ask you about subject we've broached a few times on this program. Big NFL settlement with the city, the county, and the St. Louis Convention and Sports Authority. Almost $800 million. The lawyers are getting $276 of those $1 million. And it was reported this week by the Business Journal that in addition to the $276 million, they'll be split between two law firms in our area. Turns out they filed for legal expenses. They've sent in their receipts for the copy machine toner and the depositions and the travel and who knows what else. Now, it's $900,000. When you've already received $270 million and change, do you think you might say, okay, the expenses are on us?
I would do that. And I think this is dreadful, and I think it's just flat out greedy. Now, dreadful, greedy, these are terms that sometimes are used for attorneys. But at the same time, I mean, I'm not upset as much as I thought I would be with the 35% kind of off the top, made a bad deal, kind of, you know, but I can live with that. But this, I can't live with this. This is over the top.
Yeah, this just sort of seems like one of those, the cost of doing business type things for the attorneys. And Jacob Kern's article clearly points out that the three entities who are the beneficiaries of the windfall were not watching these expenses, and they should have been, you know, and so it's not just on the lawyers for being greedy. It's up to the people from the stadium authority, from the county and the city, who were not doing their due diligence, in my opinion. But I agree, this just smells terrible.
I disagree with both of you. I think that the lawyers, they got 35% and expenses, and to expect the lawyers to turn over their expenses, it's silly. They're going to make as much money as they can, and I don't think that the three entities should have been looking over their shoulders saying, how much are you spending on that witness? What's this?
Well, I thought they were required to do that.
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think that
Bill, aren't you the guy who always says that people who work in the city and pay that earnings tax should not file for the refund when they did that work remotely in the county?
Yes, I do say that.
Well, how does that square then?
Well, because people like me who live outside the city limits and pay the earnings tax, I go into the city all the time. I expect police protection. I expect all the city services. I'm happy to pay my 1%, but I don't see that that's analogous to the lawyers who have a deal that they're going to get 35% and expenses.
They should have watched the expenses, though, because I would like to see them all. I would like to see every receipt. And I don't know how long it would take me to go through them. But I guarantee you there's some of them in there that I look at and say, like, what is this?
Dry cleaning? Really?
Ray, what's this Pebble Beach?
Ray, give us a quick thought and we'll move along.
To the witnesses,
All right. We haven't heard from Ray.
Well, I agree in part with Bill. First of all, I don't think their expenses are any issue at all. I mean, lawyers have expenses. I wouldn't suggest that they have inappropriate expenses. I have no problem with the expenses. What I said, speaking of those three agencies before, was, and it was based on talking to a number of attorneys, it's a little bit uncommon, but there aren't many deals this size, to have a 35% that doesn't taper off at some point. That's all I ever said. The 35% is fine. It's in big companies, they would never do that. And the three entities you're talking about either didn't have the sophistication or, and in fairness, nobody thought they were going to win that much.
Right.
But that's the only thing I have an issue with. I think the attorneys have I don't think they have any, I don't think it's greedy. I think they have their expenses. And I don't question their expenses.
Dr. Hammond had no problem with it either, so
I don't question their expenses.
Thank you. Wendy, I want to ask you about actually a very tragic situation this past week when a 37-year-old political operative, employee for St. Louis County and a former state representative, Cora Faith Walker, died unexpectedly at the age of 37. And judging from the Twitterverse and comments, she had a lot of friends and followers, a lot of admirers, so our thoughts are with her family. Just terrible. But the father of the mayor, Vervis Jones, the former comptroller for the city, took on Lauren Traeger from KMOV and her, what I thought was matter-of-fact, dry and straightforward reporting about some of the questions surrounding the death. And he called the reporter vile and sexist and ghoulish and slut-shaming and a lot of things that, well, it kind of seemed to be over the top, I think. And he also had words to say about the daily print media, the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. Visitation High School got dragged into it.
My alma mater.
Well, exactly. And do you think that he should dial it back or maybe even just give up Twitter altogether? Or is he doing something that's serving someone?
I don't think he's doing anything that's serving anyone but his grief. You know, if in a moment of profound grief, because a lot of people react a lot of different ways to a loss like that, especially at 37 and somebody who is very important to your family. So I will give him the benefit of the doubt on the grief thing, but from a politically strategic place, his daughter, the people who were probably not even paying attention past the point of what a sad story. Now, everybody's talking about Cora Faith Walker. Everybody's talking about the police and when they arrived and when they were called. And Mayor Jones is the head of a big city, and she does not need this. And the other thing, and I'm not on Twitter. I mean, I'm on Twitter, but I'm only a lurker. When you retweet, whether or not you think that is, you know, an endorsement of something that's being tweeted before, if you're the mayor, that's just, I mean, you can't control that. This right now, this just doesn't look good. And his attack on Lauren Traeger, a young woman, when he's always calling out people for misogyny, it just doesn't make sense. And I'm hoping that this is just a matter of somebody who has lost a second daughter and is profoundly grief-stricken, and but he absolutely should apologize to Lauren Traeger.
Well, you know, I've read about this in the newspaper on Antonio French's column, because I don't follow Twitter at all. And I read it and saw the stuff Vervis Jones was saying, and I thought, this is outlandish, and Vervis is too old to tweet. I mean, at a certain age, you should not tweet at all. I mean, the idea of, hey, my most innermost thoughts spontaneously to the world is one of the most frightening things I can think of. And so I thought, well, Vervis is just too old, and what a shame. And I bet his daughter is embarrassed and humiliated. And then when I read that she was retweeting this stuff, I thought, this is awful.
I disagree with Bill. First of all, I mean, Vervis wants to tweet, he can tweet. He's not too old to tweet. I mean,
I'm not saying it should be illegal. It's just
I hear what you're saying.
For an old guy to tweet.
I don't think his age got anything to do with it. Perhaps is the fact that his daughter's a mayor could be inconvenient, but he has the right to tweet as much as he wants to. I will say this. I think that from what I've seen, you're right as far as Lauren Traeger has done nothing to apologize for her. I know you say he should. I don't care who apologizes to, but I think Lauren Traeger's the reporting is not an issue here. It's obviously, as you said, a terrible situation. The one thing I think has been missing is I'm told there's a 911 call, which is, I think, public record, that if there is one, that would put to rest the rather large amount of rumors that are flying around as things do, as that happens with these kinds of things. And I think that would be helpful. But as far as this goes, I do think that tweeting about it and complaining about the news coverage just magnifies the story and keeps it going. And I think
That's
we need
exactly
to,
right.
as our dear friend Martin Dugan would say, hopefully we'll move on to something else.
I have a daughter who I honestly think could be mayor of a city one time, maybe a small one in West County, okay? I don't know how I would react if my daughter was the mayor and then a close friend of hers and our family passed away, okay? But I have been a newspaper, daily newspaper editor. I've been a daily newspaper reporter. And there is a set of things you do when something like this happens, and no one violated that set of protocols whatsoever. I mean, that's just a reality. We are not public servants. If something happened to any five of us, people would be looking into, they just left us? It would be, it would be looked into. You mentioned Antonio's column. I thought for the most part it was fair. However, there is a feeling that there is some bitterness on the Post-Dispatch's part, and I will say he used the phrase drop dead in his column, and that should have been taken out because that was mean-spirited, and that did smack of ha-ha. Okay. And I think that should have come out. I think it probably got missed.
Well, that was an inelegant phrasing for sure. But, the original story saying that this healthy, well-known, vibrant young woman died of complications of medical conditions. The family has been, we have been unable to reach the family. And you go, what? What? I mean, there were all sorts of questions that jump out, and of course she was a public figure. So the idea that it was wrong to ask questions, what happened, is just not.
No, I didn't say that.
I know you.
Oh, okay, all right.
Okay.
Hey, let's move on. I think the
hopefully we'll get more information, like the toxicology report in weeks to come. We'll get more information and perhaps pursue this topic again. Bill, I want to ask you about a plan that the mayor has or had. I'm not sure which is appropriate. She's been in favor of what's called an intentional encampment, where you take a piece of property in the city and maybe with some small houses, tent-like, the homeless can find a place there, perhaps some running water, electricity, counseling services, job services, maybe some medical help. But the problem is, despite her intentions and a partnership with St. Patrick's Center, they can't find a place to put it. The last location was First and Cass. That was the most recent recommendation. But the alderman there, James Page in the 5th Ward, said, no, we don't want them in our ward. Now, is this a sign of NIMBY, or is this a sign of the mayor's office just can't get the thing done?
Oh, I think it's a NIMBY thing, not in my backyard, but I don't blame the people for feeling that way. I live right by Forest Park, and if they said, okay, we're going to put a homeless encampment in Forest Park, I go, well, this doesn't make any sense. And traditionally, the homeless services are generally in a downtown area, and in most cities, that's where the homeless congregate. And I think that the mayor is making a right idea that there ought to be some encampments for them, but I don't blame an alderman for saying, I don't want it in my ward.
I don't either. We wouldn't think twice if it happened in the county. If a representative of any area in the county said, oh no, I mean, I think that he's representing the people who live there.
No, I agree. I mean, we have I won't call it a problem, but
it is a problem.
2 or 3 years ago, we had like pretty much no one standing on, highway entrances and exits, in Kirkwood we're 44, and then kind of like where Lindbergh comes in. Now there's like somebody at every one of them. If that doubles, triples, they start finding their way off of the main thoroughfares, somebody is gonna say something has to be done about this, and I won't be down at city council saying, like, you're wrong. We should just allow anybody to do anything anywhere.
Right.
So I can't. Just like you said, I can't be mad at the alderman or.
Excuse me.
No,
sorry. No. As far as Alderman Page goes, one person's NIMBY is somebody else is listening to your constituents. It may not even be him. I mean, you're going to listen to your folks in your district. I think, for some reason, I think they just got to keep working at it. I mean, it's one of those things that usually, and maybe they won't find any answer, but they just got to keep working at it. And I think it's a good idea Cheshire has. I mean, the idea of some sort of it's not permanent, but a housing solution is definitely the right approach, but it's easy to sit here and second guess it. It's just very difficult to find a spot. You just got to keep trying, and it's
well, we used to have one. It was called New Life Evangelistic Center.
That's right.
Which is coming back though, right?
Well, yeah, but
not in any form that we're.
As a sheltered
All right.
thing, I think.
well, but there was that's a
And then
it was
the
complicated.
loft dwellers came in and moved in and said, "Hey, there's homeless here."
There were
which
issues
to me was
besides.
like moving next to the airport and complaining about noise.
I can see that point, but there were issues there that went beyond that too. So in terms of how it was.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting this week that Chris Rice, the grandson of Larry, has vowed that he's going to build 100 homes in the city for Ukrainian refugees, which is
Very cool.
very ambitious.
Very nice.
Ray, I want to ask you about the 911 dispatch system, which, you know, it's been a problem in the city of St. Louis. First of all, they can't find dispatchers. About 38% of the jobs are vacant right now. The national standard is you answer 90% of the calls in 10 seconds. The city of St. Louis is doing it about 60% of the calls. In fact, about 4% of the calls are longer than 2 minutes. You're on hold for more than 2 minutes. So it's a real public safety issue. So the public safety department has decided to bring in like police cadets and some veteran officers who will voluntarily do overtime by answering the phones, which is, well, don't you really want those police officers on the street?
No, I mean, knock yourself out. I mean, when you say it's an issue, it's a scandal that anyone's got to wait. When you call 911, I don't care where it is, and certainly the city is not alone in having trouble hiring people for things. That's a national problem. But it's a scandal, and it has to be addressed. And if that's, you know, if some police officers can pick up some overtime and that's maybe a reason they'll stay on the force and stuff, good. I mean, it may not be a perfect solution, but you talk about not making the perfect the enemy of the good. I mean, right now, until they figure something out, I don't care who they use call centers, I don't care what they do, they have to make a priority. 90% isn't high enough. I mean, the idea that people are waiting, that are looking for 911 service, you can't have anybody waiting minutes. People are gonna die.
Our daughter lives in the city, and I have to tell you, whenever we drive in to see her or go anywhere, I'm thinking, boy, I hope nothing happens. I honestly, I think a lot of people are just aware of this story and how scary that is, because 911 is all we have in that moment.
And it was something about this story this time that made me think, just like you said, like, well, my daughter lives in the city. I work in the city.
Boy, I hope something doesn't happen.
You start thinking about your own family and calling 911, and 4 minutes later somebody says hello. I'm like, what?
But that's also true.
You know, I think that the solution is pretty obvious. You have to pay a lot more. And the city has gotten this infusion of millions and millions of dollars, and sitting here wondering, how come people won't work for $27,000 a year on this? I mean, what we do, they might have to double the salaries, but if you pay enough, and that way we can keep the police on the streets instead of having officers in there.
I will say this real quick. All right, I do not necessarily want a police officer working, 70 hours a week or double shifting. Now, if they want to pick up some extra hours, in plain clothes at the call center, I don't have a problem with that. But I really don't want police officers working overtime on the streets where they say, like, how long did you work today? 18 hours. No, that's just a recipe for
That's not good for them.
Good point.
Will they be any sharper answering the phone? I don't know. But, it is interesting because the city got $495 million in American Rescue Plan money. And according to published reports,
it hasn't.
It's only spent $3 million so far. So
yes.
Wendy, I want to ask you about the city of St. Louis, which was very happy recently when the National Geospatial Agency decided it was going to move from South St. Louis to North St. Louis. And everyone was happy about that. In fact, they were so happy we're subsidizing the NGA facility with public tax dollars. The city's supporting the federal government, which is a little bit weird, but here we are. Now, it's been around for a while, but the NGA has a rule that for 2,500 feet, which is almost a half a mile, on all sides of the facility, the development will be limited. You can't have certain foreign ownership. The heights of nearby buildings can't exceed 80 or so feet.
Chemicals, gas stations.
Right, no gas stations, no, maybe dry cleaners or something, I don't know. What do you think about this? I mean, this is supposed to rejuvenate North St. Louis. That's why we put it up there, and now we're finding out that the development around it is really curtailed.
Well, but there are people within the Board of Aldermen, though, who now are trying to change the agreement. And that's the part that really stuck out for me when it comes to this story, because a half a mile, I mean, that's going to be, isn't that going to, maybe I've watched too many movies, but isn't that going to be a security perimeter around, I sort of sounded like M from, no, but isn't that a security perimeter? So that's not unusual, and it is a half a mile. It's not like they're in the middle of a crater and it's 6 miles in each direction. But it's the, okay, we batted our eyes and we wanted you to come here, and now we want to change the arrangement. That's what makes me uncomfortable, because it harkens back to that homeowners conversation
I was going to say that.
that we had last week. It's like you can't, or the airport and the noise, or the homeless in the lofts. It's the same thing.
I think Em has some good points here, but
Pamela Landy.
Yeah, definitely. When I looked at it, my question is, why are we hearing about this now, or why is the city hearing about this now? In other words, if I was
out there.
Well, no, I'm saying, but if somebody is a landowner or somebody's got, an investor or whatever they are, you would think maybe they've known about this, but it would be a kind of strange. I don't know anything about security and the NGA, whatever. I mean, it is a government bureaucracy, but I'm not going to question them. But I do think it's a question as to whether you. It seems like that should have been a known thing at the outset of this.
You're right, Ray. I think from the day one, people misunderstood it.
Maybe we're just hearing about it now.
People thought you're going to put this federal facility in North St. Louis, and there's going to be
coffee
bars
shops.
and restaurants and coffee shops, and people are going to stroll down the street with their little poodles, and they're going to look into windows. I don't think that's going to happen at all, because it's going to be a fortress. If it says, if it needs the security we're hearing about, it's going to be surrounded by the tallest walls in the Midwest, if not North America.
Well, maybe not, but the whole idea where, like, granted, it's not the Pentagon, but at the same time, it's a close theory where, all right, for 2,500 feet, wait, and we're not even saying you can't build anything. We're saying
there's just certain
things you have to do.
You may be right.
So
I get that.
adjust.
Well, I get that. I'm just saying.
I guarantee you there'll be a McDonald's within 2,500 feet.
Right.
80 feet, like, how many houses are over 80 feet,
Yeah.
Well,
A lot of them.
Charlie,
if they're multi-unit structures, sure.
Oh, well, okay, I was saying home,
He's
single
thinking
family.
somebody, if they want,
home.
and I'm
But who's
not.
going to want? Come on, guys. Who's going to want to build a single-family home next to this huge government fortress, which you can't penetrate, which has all these secrets in it?
Well, what I'm saying
Why does my family want to penetrate a government fortress?
You're not going to want to live near it. That's what I'm saying.
No, but if I did, let's say I wanted to build my house and it's going to be snug up against this place as close as it can be, and they said, like, well, it can't be taller than 80 feet, Alvin. And oh, well, that just ruins the whole thing. Like, what?
Well,
I think our place is at 80 feet. Where we are right now is more than 80 feet. We could not build near it.
This is a television station.
I think I don't disagree with what you're saying. My point is, it's just, I did have well, first of all, it's a spy agency, so maybe there's going to be restaurants giving 25%.
They're not going to put pies in the windowsill.
25% off for spies or something.
A spy agency.
Well, it's
not 7:30.
I think it's cool I think it's cool. You got all these James Bond type
stuff in there.
Bill McClellan, I want to ask you about Joe Buck, maybe the greatest sports broadcaster in the history of this town. I mean, take a look at what he's done, calling the Super Bowl all those years, calling the World Series, and now he's announced that after 3 decades at Fox, he is moving to ESPN, and he'll be calling Monday Night Football with Troy Aikman. What do you think about that?
I was shattered. No, I'm teasing. No, I thought it was a good, feel-good story, you know, that he and Troy Aikman, who act like buddies, actually are buddies.
Yep.
I mean, I'm more used to the TV scene around here where, like, Larry Connors and Julius Hunter used to act like they were friends, and then as soon as Larry Connors got in trouble, Julius Hunter wrote this nasty piece, like two divas fighting, and you realize they never did like each other. But this is good. Joe Buck likes Troy Aikman. I'm happy for both of them.
And as the story goes, that Troy Aikman, who was the first kind of like, I don't think I'm going to have a contract, and they wanted to keep, you know, Joe. And Troy Aikman said, I'm going, you should come with me. And he considered it, and it kind of, you know, they probably paid Joe a little bit more, but at the same time, I thought that was kind of a cool thing.
Me too.
You know, it's interesting, when you brought this out, it just hit me. Joe Buck is the nicest guy. I mean, he really is a very decent, nice guy, as his dad was. And it's, if you go on, you talk about Twitter, the things that are said about that guy on Twitter, you can't imagine how vile a large number of people are, and it's like, so I'm just happy for Joe, whatever he's doing, and Monday Night Football is a big deal, and I think he's very, you know,
it's a very big deal. But in our own way here in St. Louis, there's immediately there's this instant. Do you think he would do the Cardinal broadcast? I mean, because we want him in the booth doing the games, but the man only has so many hours in a day.
If I could get paid more money and do less work, I think I'm going to find that job. And, he'll be doing that now, right?
He'll have plenty of time to decide to do that.
Hey, let's see what the... actually, that's all the time we have. Sorry about that. Peter Wiese Jackson is just around the corner. He's going to be joining us talking about the Missouri Botanical Garden and St. Patrick's Day and the old sod where he came from. Want to tell you, you can write us care of 9 PBS. There's the address, 63108. Don't forget those tweets. Hashtag Donnybrook STL and see Bill McClellan carrying Jack from 1989. That's worth signing up for Twitter alone. Hey, and don't forget to follow us wherever your favorite podcast is sourced. So happy St. Patrick's Day. Thanks for sharing part of yours with us. But don't go away, because Alvin and Wendy will be talking plants and more with Dr. Peter Wiese Jackson. Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9 PBS.